Well, hey folks, Jay Reale back again with another edition of the Real Deal Show. And I have a guy sitting next to me. For those of you listening on the podcast, you can't see him, but those of you watching on the YouTube channel, this man is kind of a big deal in the bodyboarding world, a bit of a luminary, glitterati, you might say. This is none other than Steve Action Jackson. Welcome, Steve. Stoked to have you here. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Thank you, Jay, for the stellar introduction. And I don't know if I deserve such a wonderful intro, but I'm glad to be here. Thank you for asking me to do this.
I'm stoked to have you here. So, Steve, in case you don't know who Steve Jackson is, he is an East Coast bodyboarder, but much more than just that. He has been an announcer on the world tour for bodyboarding for several years. It's been maybe a couple years since you've actually announced an event, because there really hasn't been any events.
Actually, the last event I did commentary for was in 2017.
Okay, so it's been 4 years, and you announced several events with Manny, sort of co-announcing among many other people, right?
Yeah. Honestly, for a good 7 years, I was doing a commentary for not only pro bodyboarding, but for a little bit of WSL South America as well. Manny has been the main person I've done commentary with. We've done announcing for U.S. Tour events like the old USBA, U.S. Open of bodyboarding. The first World Tour event that I did commentary with Manny for was the 2011 Pipeline Pro. So you're talking 10 years ago.
Jeez, that's quite a history of announcing, and we're gonna get into that. But first, I want to back up. I want to go back to the roots of Steve Jackson. I know you're from Jersey. The accent gives it away every time. The way you say the word W-A-T-E-R. Can you say that for me?
Water.
I love it, man. I love it. So tell me about the beginnings of Steve Jackson. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised in New Jersey, central New Jersey on the coast. I was actually born in a town called Neptune.
Wow.
So
that's prophetic.
A water reference right off the bat from day one. Yeah, I grew up on the Jersey Shore, and by the time I was 13, I was hooked on bodyboarding. I didn't really get to go to the beach much when I was a kid because both my parents worked, my mom and my stepdad. And it wasn't until I was 13 that I borrowed a classmate's board one day. I had been sitting on the beach with a bunch of classmates watching people surf and bodyboard, and I was like, that looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I borrowed a classmate's board, an old Turbo Z, complete with the hard bottom.
Yeah, man.
The
PVC.
vinyl deck with the neon palm trees, the scoop nose, the wing rails.
Yep.
And I went out in board shorts, no fins. Water was frigid, because anybody who's from the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic knows that the water temperatures in May and June are still somewhere in the mid-50s.
Right.
So, most guys are wearing 3-2 fulls. Some of them are still wearing 3-mil boots. And I paddled out, and I was freezing my tail off, but I didn't care because, I wanted to try out this board.
Yep.
I got out there and I kicked in. I managed to scratch my way into a few waves, but that first wave I took off. I went down the line on a little right-hander, and it was such a rush, and I was hooked from that first wave.
What beach was that?
That was Manasquan Inlet in New Jersey.
A famous spot in New Jersey, really kind of like, I want to almost say it's the big wave capital of New Jersey, right?
That area, Manasquan Inlet, and then across the boat channel into Point Pleasant where Jenkinson's is.
Yep.
World-class waves.
Wow.
So.
Right on. So is Neptune inland from the beach a little bit?
It's a little bit north and just inland. Going north, if you go from, we'll say Belmar, which is another known destination on the Jersey Shore.
Yep.
It's about a 5-minute drive inland.
Oh, so not far from the beach.
No, you can drive up the beach. You'll go through. On the Jersey Shore, it's small little coastal town, so you can buzz through 3 towns in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So you'll go from Belmar to Avon by the Sea to Bradley Beach. You hang a left and drive inland, and a couple minutes later, you're in Neptune.
So now, growing up there, before you tried bodyboarding, you said that was around 12 years old?
13, yeah.
So were you into other sports as a kid, or what was your thing?
As a young kid, very typical upbringing, soccer, football, baseball, and I just never really took to them. I love sports, but, baseball didn't have really the coordination for batting, and football, you can tell by my stature, scrawny little skin and bones
Bruiser.
kid trying to play football.
Right.
I was just getting manhandled. I was second string everything. I was starting bench warmer. Soccer, on the other hand, I only played 1 year of organized soccer just because back in the 80s it wasn't super popular where I was at. But I've always been told, even as a little kid, I'm a good defender.
Okay.
So, that's something I miss about the World Tour events is on lay days, jumping into a pickup game.
Sure.
So
with a bunch of people from countries where soccer is a religion, basically.
Brazil, Australia, South Africa. I love getting together with the competitors from around the world and just jumping into a pickup game.
Oh, that's fun.
A little international friendly.
Totally. Yeah, I get it. So, okay, so there you are, 13-year-old Grom in north central New Jersey. You got into bodyboarding. You got the bug. Where did it go from there?
Well, that first summer, I went down to Florida to live with my biological father and my 2 brothers for a little while.
Where in Florida?
Just outside of Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
And he bought me my first board, a Mach 77.
Whoa.
And it
Went
was
straight to the top.
game on from there. And I remember getting back to New Jersey, and I wanted to go to the beach every day.
Yep.
So I went to the local surf shop, bought a board bag so I could throw it on my back with a pair of fins, and rode from that point on, it was almost on a daily basis every summer for years.
Yeah.
Just jump on my bike, ride up to the beach, check the surf. If the waves were good, I'd call my friends on a payphone. And because obviously we didn't have cell phones back then.
Good old days.
Yeah, the late 80s were a golden time. No cell phones.
Right.
Sorry. And I'd call my friends on a payphone. Their parents were usually pissed because it'd be like 6, 7 in the morning, and I'd be waking up the whole house to be like, "Hey, the waves are good. Get your butts out of bed and get up to the beach."
Yep. Yep.
And then after getting the Mach 77, like that entire following winter, all I did was like daydream about bodyboarding.
So you weren't a year-round bodyboarder at that point?
At that point, no.
You probably didn't have the money to buy all the neoprene that you need to go year-round.
Yeah, to surf in New Jersey during the winter, you need a good hooded 5mm wetsuit.
Sure.
One, wetsuit technology wasn't what it is now back then. Mm-hmm. And 2, anybody who surfs winters and throws down money for a winter wetsuit knows they're not cheap.
Yeah. So the suits themselves are $500+ now.
Yeah.
Back then, maybe $350, $400, and then you get the gloves and the booties. Yeah.
But the next big thing was this right here.
Who's that kook?
In April of 1989, I turned 14 years old. I rode my bike into downtown Manasquan and picked up a copy of this exact magazine. Not this exact copy, but this exact issue.
Just before you finish that, I should say to the folks just listening on the podcast, Steve is holding up my very first cover shot on Bodyboarding Magazine in 1988. That photo was taken. So continue, please.
I rode my bike to the local 7-Eleven because Bodyboarding magazine was available on pretty much every newsstand, and so 7-Eleven was the first place I saw a bodyboarding magazine. I bought a copy of this, and I saw Jay on the cover, and on the cover it says East Coast star Jay Reale. And I immediately had like the proverbial light bulb go off in my head. I'm like, if he's from the East Coast and can make the cover of Bodyboarding magazine, I want to be a pro bodyboarder.
Oh, man.
You know, and this magazine and this guy sitting next to me changed the course of my life for the last 32 years. I've been bodyboarding for 33 years. It was in year number 2 that this magazine, and the idea that, hey, a guy from the East Coast can do this, I want to take a shot at doing that. I want to grow up to be like Jay, you know, and that was the mindset.
Thank you.
And you know, from there it was game on. That following fall, I bought a used wavelength wetsuit.
Yeah.
Wavelength wetsuits from Australia. A buddy of mine had one. I remember it was royal blue, neon yellow, had the black rubberized chest. Oops, I knocked my mic off. But, you know, and then I started being able to ride and get into the falls.
Yeah.
And then that opened up a whole new realm, because on the East Coast, everybody looks forward to the late summer and fall, like August, September, October, because it's hurricane season, and it's prime wave riding season on the East Coast. You know, anytime a storm system would track up the East Coast, we'd be glued to the Weather Channel. We didn't really have Surfline or any stuff like that. So you had to almost become an amateur meteorologist to know 100%. When the waves were coming. And, you know, me and my friends during the flat spells, we'd be watching bodyboard videos. We'd be having board shops where, you know, we're trying all kinds of crazy things like ironing the rails on our boards with wax paper to make them slicker and faster. Yeah. You know, cutting up old wetsuit material to make, you know, ankle pads and fin tethers. And just, it was such an amazing time to be a kid in the late 80s and early 90s. And then by the time I was 15, I was surfing winters in New Jersey, and that opened up an entirely different realm, because, believe it or not, winter, Jay knows this, winter on the East Coast is when it fires. You know, you get a lot of nor'easters, which are like winter hurricanes. You know, you get big swells, hollow barrels, but there's a lot of snow, and you're dealing with water temperatures in the 30s and 40s. Yep,
misery for sure. But, you know, it takes commitment. And I think, you know, a lot of the people that grow up on the East Coast, particularly the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, you know, they have that commitment because they love riding waves, right? So you're willing to suffer for that. And like you mentioned, nowadays, wetsuit technology is so much better than it was back then. Maybe you could extrapolate that it's not as hard to be a winter, year-round surfer on the East Coast as it was back in our day. Although we didn't know better, you know? We just used what was available at the time.
Nowadays, it's definitely more accessible. I know back home in New Jersey, there's a really core group of guys, both surfing and bodyboarding, that love chasing winter swells. One of my Custom X teammates, John Mangini, has actually been taking it to a whole other level, going up into New England and chasing slabs in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, and it's a whole different realm up there.
It's another level of frigid up there.
Exactly.
Gnarly. So, you know, because we're on this topic of winter surfing, just let's do a little sidebar. What's the coldest day you ever remember encountering during your years bodyboarding on the East Coast?
Oh,
it sounds like you have one in the chamber here, so let's hear it.
I get chicken skin and chill down my spine just thinking about it. I want to say it was 95 or 96. We had some really brutal winters back in the mid-90s. You know, lots of blizzards, hard, cold weather. I had a session at Manasquan Inlet. A buddy of mine paddled out with me. and the water temperature was 34 degrees.
Yep.
There was ice on the jetty rocks.
Yep.
They looked like glaciers. It was like 4 to 6 foot, howling offshore winds, like 25 to 35 miles an hour, gale force winds. So with the wind chill factor, it was below 0. When I got out of the water, I couldn't feel my face. I had icicles in my eyebrows, and I was shivering so violently, I had trouble opening my car to get in and turn on the car and get the heat going.
I love it.
And then I basically had to jump in the back seat of my car and spend 30 minutes just trying to warm up enough that I would stop shivering and be able to peel out of my wetsuit.
Misery, man. That's insane. So, I mean, yeah, the cold days, I mean, they're next level. You do remember those. I remember a couple of the coldest days I ever encountered back there too, for sure. It's insane. So you were obviously super committed to year-round bodyboarding. That led to you competing. So talk about some competitive highlights of your young years as a bodyboarder.
Well, you know, my first contest experience left such a bad taste in my mouth that I didn't compete for years after
Wow.
that. You know, with the exception of an end of the summer local contest at Manasquan Inlet, you know, I didn't compete because...
what happened? Do tell.
The 1989 Brave New World Pro-Am, I signed up for the bodyboard division. They sent us out at dead high tide.
Of course.
Yeah, this is typical of the late 80s. You know,
Yep.
bodyboarders would get sent out in the worst conditions.
Yep.
Surfing got the spotlight. But they sent us out at dead high tide. And mind you, back in the late 80s, contest heats were 6 people, 3 waves that you were scored on, and only 15 minutes. So it was a complete melee out in the water. You know, and guys are doing rolos onto the beach, onto like rocks and shells, and I sat out there for 15 minutes, didn't catch a single wave because I'm just watching these guys, and I'm like, how the heck are they doing this? There's not even a wave there, and they're doing rolls and spins, and I'm just like, I'm out of my league right now, and these waves are horrible.
Yeah, right.
So I got my contest t-shirt, and I went home, and I was like, that was not worth my money.
Yeah. So you took a break for a while.
So my favorite contest memory was actually 2 years later.
Yep.
That local contest at Manasquan Inlet I mentioned, the end of the summer contest. Me and my 2 friends, Ben Kenny, who actually lives in LA these days, he's a member of Incubus, and our friend Todd Stavak. The 3 of us started training all summer for this end of the summer event.
Wow.
We went Kauai Classic style. You know, out in the water, we would run simulated heats, we'd push each other.
Wow.
When there were no waves, we'd be at one of our 3 houses watching bodyboard videos. We wore out the Kauai Classic video, the Riders of Tubes videos, and the first couple of Tom Boyle videos.
Yep.
And we would do surf shop tours. You know, we'd jump on our bike early in the morning, and we'd go visit all the local surf shops and see what bodyboards they had, what fins they had. And we just were nonstop focus on the end of summer event. And that when that event came, we all finaled. I was, for the first time, the way they had it broken down, I was in men's, and I made my first final. And, you know, I think I finished 5th overall because I had to ride multiple heats. You know, I won my semifinal heat, and then I finished 5th overall. And I was super stoked. I brought home a trophy, showed it to my mom. Hey, Mom, look what I got.
Wow.
You know,
cool.
and the other 2 guys finished, Ben and Todd finished 1 and 2, respectively, in the junior division.
Yep.
So all our training, all our hard work totally paid off. And we were so pumped up. The local surf shop that we would go to, was super happy for us and started offering us, shop deals or sponsor deals through the shop, and that really helped propel us forward.
Yeah. Your story sounds really similar to mine. I had a same thing down in Maryland. Had a crew of guys. We were super dedicated to bodyboarding, and we would practice competition. We would experiment with, making our own skegs for the boards and all kinds of just like you were talking about. And it really tells me something about you, Steve, is that you're the type of person that will set a goal and then work towards achieving it, which is the mark of a successful person. So before we get into the latter part of your bodyboarding days, which are still going on, by the way, you alluded to one of your friends is in Incubus. And I know you had a punk rock turn in your life where you were really into that whole scene and you were involved in like a magazine or something, right?
Yeah.
What's that about?
For a good decade of my life in my late teens and 20s, I ran around with a lot of bands from New Jersey. There was a really good hardcore and punk rock scene during the 90s. And I was fortunate enough to befriend a lot of the bands from going to shows in New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia. And during that time, I printed my own fanzine, my own underground magazine for a good 10 years. It was called External 732. And I did all of the interviews, I shot the photos, I did the music reviews, I solicited all the ads, and then once I had everything together, I only got a couple issues out a year because it was a lot of work. The first issue actually took me a full year to do.
Wow, yeah.
But once I had everything I needed, I would do the layout, and mind you, with an old punk rock fanzine, it was quite literally cut and paste with tape and paste,
Old school.
Yes, and
then photocopies.
Typewriter, and then I'd get it all laid out. I'd go to Kinko's, which is now FedEx office.
Cha-ching! There's a plug.
Late night printing sessions, and the only thing that I would have them do is staple and fold it. I would collate it all by myself.
Jeez.
So it'd be midnight. I'm wired on my fourth cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And it just boom, boom, boom. And then I would give it out at shows.
And were you making some kind of money on this? I hope.
I didn't make any money on it.
No money. Just did it for the love.
Did it for the love. Yeah. When it comes to
insane.
music, when it comes to bodyboarding, especially bodyboarding, it's all for the love of it.
Wow.
So,
okay.
But it's just the experience alone of being able to do that fanzine and get to know the bands and make lifelong friendships. I mean, fortunately, my friend Ben, we knew each other through bodyboarding, and then I realized how much of a musical prodigy he was. But I've always been very proud to call him a friend. He pushed me a lot bodyboarding wise, and I'm sure there's lots of guys who can make this claim, but Ben is actually the first person I ever saw land a drop knee roll.
Wow.
Drop knee.
Oh, no kidding.
He used to have a Tubes mini 39-inch board, and he would throw that thing around. He was like a combination of, Keith Sasaki and the Bones Brigade with that thing.
Wow.
So he did it on a bet. I was like, I bet you can't do it. There's no way you can do it. I'll give you 3 tries. He went out there first try. Wow. Bam, nailed it.
Classic. So. Well, that's cool, man. So you had the competitive drive at one point. You obviously had goal-oriented ethos in your life. And at some point, you moved into the sort of the administrative side of bodyboarding, which led to you doing the announcing. How'd that all come about?
Well, just to backtrack a little, once I did start competing as an amateur full-time, the hunger to get results was always there. I always had fun, but when it came to competition, I got to a point where I got past the whole punk rock 90s thing and, partying and staying out late the night before contests and just being an idiot.
Yep.
I went on to win 5 amateur district titles.
Solid.
So I had a pretty good run as an amateur.
This was the ESA we're
Yes,
talking about. Yep.
Eastern Surfing Association, Central New Jersey District. I can't say thank you enough to my former district director, Scotty Goodwin. May you rest in peace. From there, I actually took a couple of years off before trying to compete professionally. That first pro event was the 2005 Jenks Pro. And simultaneously with that event and then the following year and subsequent years with the USBA, the United States Bodyboarding Association Pro-Am Tour, not only was I competing in the men's division, but I was also working underneath Jason Bitzer as his event coordinator, taking care of logistics and setup. The way I got started with commentary was that first year of the Jenks Pro 2005, he had Manny Vargas there as the beach announcer. Again, we're back in 2005, didn't have a webcast.
Right.
So Manny was there as the beach announcer, and one day Manny got caught up waiting for a train down to Point Pleasant, and there was nobody on the mic. So Jason's like, "Hey Steve, can you jump on the mic real quick and cover for Manny until he gets here?" And so I jumped on the mic, and the rest is kind of history.
Wow. So that started it just because of the train.
So thank you, Manny Vargas.
And thank you to the train system that failed Manny. That's awesome, man. What a cool story. So obviously that led to future gigs announcing, right? How did the world tour come into play then?
Well, in 2006, I met my ex-wife, and after running around for the Jenks Pro, the New York Pro, and Jason and Beta Bitzer's wedding, me and her started seeing each other. And so there was a lot of traveling back and forth, and eventually we got married and I relocated to Brazil for 5 years.
Yeah.
During my time living down there, splitting half the year between Brazil and New Jersey and just going summer to summer and then living full time, I started doing commentary down there. I was working with a couple of bodyboard schools. One of them was Escola Guilherme Tamega, which is a social project for the favela kids. It's free for the favela kids as long as they're registered in school and maintaining passing grades.
Nice.
And the person in charge of the schools, Flavio Brito, is a Brazilian event promoter down there. He was organizing bodyboard events as well as beach rugby and multiple other sports.
And you just met him by chance on the beach one day, or somebody introduced you guys?
GT told me I needed to get in touch with Flavio. He could show me around. He was from Copacabana. Honestly, he lived just a few blocks away from where I was living. So, I ended up on the beach and in the water with the bodyboard school like 3 times a week while I was down there.
You were learning Portuguese, so there was probably a language barrier at that point, at the beginning.
I was learning Portuguese, but fortunately a lot of Brazilians speak very good English down there. Secondary languages and even, third languages are very important down there. Big focus in the schools down there.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So, 2010, Flavio asked me if I would be interested in doing commentary for the Buzios Bodyboarding Pro, and that was the first world tour event I did commentary for, and apparently I did a well enough job that I impressed Teza McKenna.
Yeah, so you did the webcast, right?
I did the webcast.
Because obviously you're not going to do beach announcing in English and Brazil.
Yeah, fortunately with a lot of Brazilian events, surfing and bodyboarding, they'll do a Portuguese webcast and an English webcast to get more international viewers.
Yep.
So I did the English commentary, the English webcast, And I was also finishing up at the end of the day and running home and writing the press releases for the IBA.
Long day, man.
So,
Yep.
fortunately, I impressed guys like Terry Teza McKenna from Australia and Craig Haddon. And I can never say thank you enough to those guys for the opportunities they opened up for me.
Sure.
You know, and then, like I said, the following, March, I always forget because the pipeline contest has moved around so much. But that pipeline contest in 2011, you know, people were asking, you know, who should be doing commentary with Manny Vargas, and my name came up a couple of times. So, you know, next thing I know, I'm flying from Brazil back to New Jersey, and was in New Jersey for a couple of days, and then from New Jersey to Hawaii, and all of a sudden, you know, some beach rat from New Jersey is co-hosting with Manny Vargas at Pipeline for, you know, local TV station in Hawaii. Is it OC16?
Okay.
And Red Bull TV, and it was just, you know, fortunately I was given opportunities after that, you know, to do commentary in Puerto Rico, the events in northern Chile, events in Brazil. You know, I could rattle off all the names, but, you know, it'd take the rest of this podcast.